This is artist rap. I'm talking to musicians, people, places, things. Getting their perspective to enlighten your world. We're rapping to musicians. This is artist rap. I'm your host, Ali Jackson. This is artist rap. Welcome. Today's guest is the great harmonica player from Dallas, Texas. I'm talking about Mickey Raphael. Known for his decades of work with artists from around the globe and Nashville, Tennessee. We met each other while working with Wynton Marsalis and Willie Nelson on the project Two Men with the Blues. We hope you enjoy our conversation. Welcome, Mickey. Happy to have you.
Thank you, Ali. Thanks for having me.
Man, the pressure is all mine.
Uh, Speaking of pressure, playing with you guys was, with Wynton and the Jazz at Lincoln Center band. That was one gig that I couldn't just sleepwalk through or improvise like I can on some of my other gigs. I really had to pay attention, and it really, I had to, I just couldn't drift through that one. That was one I really had to come to the plate. That really was a put the pressure on me.
Well, please elaborate. Why is that? Why was that so different for
Well,
you?
because you guys are legitimate musicians. I think I've been just faking it all this time. But no, it's funny because everybody had charts, and I'm not a great reader. And Wynton was going, he just shook his head and he goes, "Man," he goes, "I don't know how to write for the harmonica. He can write for all these instruments." I said, "Well, and this is what he did. I said, just write when I'm supposed to play and trust me enough to know that I'll play the right thing." So those were my charts. It was just, it was when to play, not what to play.
I see. I got you. And tell me a little bit about the music you grew up playing or what music you gravitated to, like stylistically, and we can. I'll just ask you questions.
Yeah. So I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and there was a kind of a folky scene, a folk music scene in the '60s, and that's what I was leaning towards. I really wasn't playing a lot of blues back then, unless it was an acoustic situation. So the writers that were around in the little coffee houses, and it was during the Vietnam War, and there was a lot of protests going on. So you had Dylan, you had um, uh, Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie. I mean, this was the music kind of that I was listening to. Like acoustic, protest music, really. So that's the music that I cut my teeth on, and I would hang out at these little coffee houses, and where the singers, songwriters, would hang and play, and so I start playing with people that were very lyrical more than musical. So I had to, you would listen to the music, you listen to the lyrics, and just kind of complement that, paint a picture, with the lyrics, with your instrument, but you made sure not to get in the way of the lyrics. That was the main thing. You still had to make a statement musically or set a mood. It was more like setting a mood, but you did not want to step on, on the sing on the lyrics of the song were the most important part.
Now explain a little bit because not everyone's a musician and know this. What delineates folk music and blues music? What's the difference to you? What's the
Um, well, I think folk music was more. I think folk music was more Appalachian based originally. I mean, if you really want to go back, and then before Appalachia, I think it came from Ireland. So it was kind of music of the of mountain people originally, and they would tell stories of their lives. Blues, I think, came from the Delta, and it was truly an American based music. It did not come from anywhere else, as far as I'm, from my studying. It came from the South, And as jobs migrated north, so did the music. So the folk music, grew into kind of a protest mode, and the blues was just singing the plight of the everyday man.
Hmm. Great. Now share with us what what is the essential thing that you look for in any song or when you're playing. What is it that you listen for and respond to?
Um, because played with a lot of writers, I listened to the lyric, and I think the lyric um, would set the mood. I listen to what the song is saying. Is it a happy lyric or is it a sad lyric? An instance of like folk music compared to the blues. Folk, "Oh Susanna" is an old folk song, or she'll be coming around the mountain. I mean, everybody's happy to see whoever she is coming around the mountain. It's like, so that said, blues is she ain't coming around the mountain. Where is she? So it's a that may be oversimplified, but I just that's one way I can explain the difference between blues and folk in a very simplistic way.
No, that's brilliant. He's like, I can show you better than I can tell you.
Yeah, I had another call come in, so I had to stop it there for a second. But yeah, that's and um, I don't know what's politically correct, but I mean, we got the blues from black culture, I think, if that's how you say it.
Well,
Um,
it's
Whereas I think folk music might be predominantly white because it um, came from Ireland and came to the rural South originally. But it was a protest music. I mean, it was a way for people to express themselves and maybe try to get their ideas or their stories across to the general public that might not know about their problems.
well, I think they're all one and the same. I think it's a platform, and this is what uh, has made such a deep synergy or connection for all people. Like for musicians, we play with musicians all around the world all of the time. And what is it that we all have common ground on? The blues,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
And if you
Yeah.
like some great musicians said, many of them said this, but it was like if you can't play the blues, you can't play you know what. So that's
Yeah, because everybody's had the blues. I mean, that's one thing that
the human
you know.
condition. Yeah, we all have the blues every day. And the great thing about blues or blues based musicians, and that's why I have so much love for you, is like you embrace that element of it. It doesn't have to be complicated. This you could share this the story you shared with me recently. Uh, somebody could play fast and play a whole bunch of stuff or whatever, but it's the essence of what you say.
Yeah, it's a feeling, and I get my feeling. I mean, I express my feeling playing through my tone, really, and the notes that I choose. But it's not about how fast I play, or my skill of running scales and stuff. That's really not how I would practice. I might practice, listening to some music, getting a picture in my mind what the lyric is saying, and then trying to complement or paint that picture melodically.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit because a lot of times the harmonica, people, it's not always a frontline instrument like a solo instrument. However, it's a very unique instrument in its sound and for accompanying. So whether it's uh like adding color or seasoning or spice and flavor, and with you saying that, you listen a lot, how do you develop that? Like if you're an artist and a musician with just listening, but like how do you come up with phrases or uh counter lines and ideas that go along with either a vocalist or horn player or a different melody instrument?
To learn to listen. So I spent a lot of time growing up listening to records, all the time, and listen to music. And nowadays, if I'm listening to something, if I want to listen to a bass line, that's all I hear is the bass line. If I want to know what the song is about, I'll listen to the lyric, but then I can't keep I won't be able to hear what the drums are doing because I'll focus in on one thing. Or if I listen to the rhythm guitar or the keyboards or something like that, I'm paying attention to that keyboard, and I'm not and I don't hear the lyric, or I'm not getting what the lyric's saying. So it really is kind of car what's the word?
Oh, compartmentalized.
Compartmentalized. Yeah, I listen to one instrument at a time, and I kind of study how they're phrasing. Um, so if there's um, I understand what the singer is doing. If I'm going to play during a verse, I'll wait till the singer's not singing. Or if I do play while he's singing, I'm holding one note that's just kind of like underlying the lyrics, so it doesn't take the listener's ear away from the singer. And then if he takes a breath, you can always throw a lick in there, but it's got to complement how it's got to be another voice. It's got to complement how the singer is approaching it. And then as far as playing with other musicians, you have to in a band situation, you have to constantly listen what everybody's doing, and you've got to be generous with your time and your notes. Like if I'm playing a solo, uh, you know, if I have the first or take the first solo, I'll play my solo, and then I'll make sure that I end my solo a little early to give the next player time to throw some pickup notes in there. So I don't just play till the end of my uh, where my solo is and stop, and then he's got to get up to speed. I'll end a little early, so it's kind of like a being polite or a graciousness thing. It gives him time to either leave a space of nothing going on or have some pickup notes to get into his zone. So that's just being a good neighbor in the studio, or when you're playing with other players, and you really have to listen to what to the other players, what they're doing.
Well, you said you touched on some very important points because I'd like to reiterate what you shared about how you listen, especially for musicians and for people that just enjoy music, to focus your listening where you can focus on one instrument or one sound. Mostly people just follow the voice or vocalist.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
natural, or whatever the solo instrument is. But oftentimes there's a lot or very important to listen to the rhythm section and accompanying instruments. So that's a huge point. And just listening, like you said, and the level or layers of how we listen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, half the time I don't even know because I'm paying attention to the music. I don't even know what Willie's lyrics are, what he's saying. I couldn't sing them back to you because I'm paying more attention to the musician, to the playing, to the music, and the stuff we did with Winton and the band with you. Man, if I'm listening to what you're doing, I'm not. I can't listen to Dan. I can't listen to the piano necessarily, or I'll have to focus in and say, okay, what is Dan's left hand doing that goes along with Ali's kick or something like that. I have to really focus in on stuff like that. But when I'm doing that, I'm not listening to Carlos. I can't unless I then zone turn him on. I can't. I have to really specifically listen to the instruments, or I can then focus in on the rhythm section and how the piano becomes a rhythm instrument at the time. But when I'm doing that, then I'm not listening to Willie's vocal at all.
Yeah,
So it's like queuing stuff up in the studio. It's like everything is muted till I start bringing the other instruments in.
right there. Yeah, there's a hierarchy. Oftentimes, um, That's what requires so much time listening. They said God created people with 2 ears and one mouth to listen twice as much as we speak. So, um, but yeah, that's a whole art in itself. What? Tell me, or tell us what is soul to you? What is soul?
Soul, I think, is if you can connect to, it's a feeling. I mean, it's. I mean, if I can, I mean, I think I play when I am playing soulfully. I'm being totally honest about my playing and connecting with my feelings. And I can't plan what I play. I have no idea what I'm going to be playing, but it's just it's heartfelt. And if I play something that I think is really soulful, I can't repeat it. At that point it gets technical. So to me, a soulful player is playing from the heart, I think.
Well said. Um, give me a perspective of or an idea of what music gives you the best platform, or a particular song. It could be a specific song that allows you to be most expressive.
That allows me to be most expensive. It's we just did a record with Sinatra. I mean, of Sinatra songs with Willie singing. Actually, we played in Vegas with him, and we did his last live show uh,
Wow.
in Palm Springs. So I was able to sit there on the side of the stage and watch him. But for instance, we did "Wee Small Hours of the Morning," and it's about a guy waking up. If she would only call, and that's something that I've experienced before, and I played the solo on it, and I had to channel, I think, Sinatra's voice. I phrased it. I played it very simply. I just played the melody, and I played it like I thought Sinatra would sing it, but I really felt it. I mean, if you can really connect with the lyric and with the story, um, and what they're trying to say, boy, that's something that is so heartfelt. Because I know I've woken up in the middle of the night, and longing for somebody or something like that, and so I could connect with the feeling that that song was trying to convey, and that's what a great lyric and a great. I mean, even if it was an instrumental and it just had a title in the wee small hours, and I played it, it's like, okay, what are your feelings when you wake up in the middle of the night, and if you can transpose that or express that through your instrument, which is the way I would express it. I wouldn't be able to write a lyric like that, but I sure could feel it, and I could express it, through the harmonica.
I think that's one of the most mysterious things about music. Sometimes a word, it's not the word, it's the meaning or the feeling behind a word in a lyric.
Oh yeah.
Or
Hmm.
it's not the note, like playing the right note, that doesn't matter. It's the meaning or the feeling behind whatever note you play.
Right.
So
Well,
it transcends the technical. It's more of the spiritual.
right. It's very spiritual. And even when we're cutting a record with Willie, we'll cut the tracks first without him, but we'll have a stunt singer, just so everybody can kind of hear the lyric, and it's just kind of a treat. I mean, we've got charts, so we could obviously cut the track without knowing where the vocal is, but it's nice. It is just a treat to have somebody singing the lyric, um, so we can get an idea, what kind of feeling that we're trying to convey.
Brilliant. Share, like, since we're talking about music recording, what record best represents your playing, or what Mickey Raphael uh, likes to do.
Well, there were several. I love Teatro, which was a Willie record, but what I play on there is very sparse. It's not a lot of showboating. Um, I played some bass harmonica, real rhythmically, um, and it's I didn't play. The harp I play is it's a diatonic tune, diatonic harp. I didn't play any like hot licks, so it's a lot of ambient sounds. Another one would be Emmylou Harris. There's a song she recorded the Beatles song "Here, There, and Everywhere," and my solo on that was just one of these things that I just got the first time, and we never went back and recorded it again. It was just all kind of stream of consciousness thought. Mainly, what it was the song was changing keys, and I was thinking, oh, do I have those notes on this harmonica? And it was like, flying by the seat of my pants. It was because on the diatonic you're pretty limited to what you can play key wise. But that's one of my favorite solos was "Here, There, and Everywhere," and then more recently was a guy named Chris Stapleton. His record "Traveler." There's some really nice, playing on that. But and all the stuff we did with Winton, because again, I think I felt like I was top of my game, even though it was stuff I was familiar with. It was the first record we did live was blues, and then the second was a tribute to Ray Charles. So, and it was all live too. We cut. So, you had to do it the first time. You had to do it right the first time. And then having all these great players, you couldn't, you had to, rise up to the level of what I perceived these guys were.
Uh-oh. Constantly bombarded with uh, the world of technology.
Oh yeah.
Aren't we?
Yeah. But you know what? Nowadays, everybody with, a computer and, an Apogee Duet. I mean, that's the lowest tech you can go. Um, I can do overdubs, with just the stuff on my desk right here, and make records right here. I mean, I can't cut other instruments, but I can do harmonica. As a musician, you've got to have some, or it's helpful to have a little bit of recording knowledge, just because the equipment is so affordable and attainable. With a laptop or a computer, and an interface and and a good microphone. You can record. In your home. So
It makes the world a difference. However, it takes a little tech savviness for some musicians. If you're really focused on playing, you know, a computer,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like what is that?
yeah. And I barely know how to use my cell phone, but I can. I've got this set up to where I can, record the harmonica, and then email, then get the file to somebody. But it's just a minimal amount of technology. I'm not an engineer. I don't want to be an engineer. I don't comp my tracks. If I'm going to do something for somebody, I'll record 4 or 5 passes and send them everything and let them comp. You know.
Right.
So, but nowadays you almost have to have a basic knowledge, of digital recording to get by. At least it makes it easier, especially with COVID. I don't want to go in a studio. I could to overdub, but when you're recording with live musicians, but I really miss the connection too, because when we're in a situation, with the live band, we're constantly have eye contact, and it's not really said you take the first verse and you play the second verse and you take the solo. It's all kind of very intuitive between the players, who plays when.
Oh, absolutely. Um, it's all, yeah, balance. And that is probably the most difficult thing. The more players you have, is creating balance. Um, I remember that working on those projects with Willie and Winton. It was always negotiating who was going to play when, where, the balance, like you say, being
Yeah,
cautious. Um, because once you can play, and this is very interesting, when you do, you spend all this time on your instrument and practicing and learning. So then when you actually have the ability to play, it's also still keeping in mind that it's in the context of a group of people playing,
Yeah.
and just courtesy. So for our
Right.
younger musicians, that's really important. Yeah, it's fun to play, but it's also just as great to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And but another thing too, because with country song, any songs, um, the songs might be 3 or 4 minutes, so there's a limited amount of time. And if you have two soloists, um, your solo lasts you know, only so long. Like for a verse, you might play one verse, and then it's the next guy's solo. When we played with Winton, or you guys, kind of in more of a jazz field, you'd play your solos. Of course, we weren't really limited to time. I mean, the song length, but we could play out. We could play two or three passes when we were soloing, which was something I had never, you know, done before. It's like gives you freedom to get into the solo. But then we weren't watching the clock. We didn't have to worry about if a song was 3 minutes; it could be 5 minutes with that band. So that was fun. And Winton would constantly say, play more. And I thought, well, I just played my solo, isn't that it? And he goes, no, no, take another, take another. So that was something that I wasn't used to, which was great. It was fun. You know.
Yeah, I think the future now. I was going to ask you because I mean you've worked with many artists, and you're basically a family member to with Willie. You've been with him for what, almost 30 years, around that. Somewhere.
46.
What? That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
it's longer than I am on Earth. Um,
Yeah.
um, what is your feeling towards? Because I know you were just sharing before I think we got started about how the diversity of audience that you all get on tour, um, the fans, music fans. Um, why do you think that is? I mean, not because just Willie is obviously Willie's a legend, but and he's probably one of the the elder statesmen in show business, period, or out there on the road
Yeah.
touring musicians. Um, with music now, let me reframe that. For music now, where do you think the listeners where are they coming from? Or how are they going to get into music, or like musicians, live musicians? I'm speaking of people that play instruments, that have bands, and how do the young people connect to that?
Well, in our situation, I mean, Willie makes everybody in the audience feel like he's singing to them. He makes eye contact with the audience. He's happy to be there. He'd be there if if there's 5,000 people in the audience or there's 50. He'd still be putting on the same show. So he makes everybody, all the fans, feel a part of it. He's very sincere, and he really does enjoy what he's doing, and he makes a connection to the audience. So you can't just get up there and play for ourselves, even though sometimes I am. It's just like I'm up there playing with the other. When I was playing with you guys, I didn't care if there was anybody out in the audience. I just wanted to play, with your, with you guys. But Willie makes that connection to the audience, and they remember that, and he builds a great fan base, and they keep coming back because everybody in that audience will say, "Oh, I eye contact with Willie, and I feel that he was singing and singing to me, and the lyric was something I could identify with." So there's a commonality there between, and it crosses, definitely the political line. I mean, it's I think that's our biggest divide is politically, and he gets when I first started with him, he gets the rednecks and the hippies, together. That was the audience. It was the long hairs. I mean, because it's during the Vietnam War, and he's got the long hairs and the the Rednecks. Of course, there were some clubs I couldn't go in by myself. I had to walk with Paul, our drummer, who was heavily armed. Uh, because of I had long hair and I was just this young hippie kid, and some of the joints that Willie played were pretty rough. But
So
once we got on stage, everything eased up.
tell me about that. Tell me about the divide in your experience or in just in life of, and it's not just black and white, but prejudice between people, people of the same color, just ideological.
Yeah, ideologically, I mean, back when I first started, it was the war. It was the Vietnam War. So you had the protest people that were against the war, and people that veterans almost, and then you had the dope smokers and the ones that thought marijuana was the work of the devil. So, but the music drew everybody together. Um, I was more in the protester movement, on the protester side, and people, playing in Texas. I mean, people like their guns, and and they didn't like hippies. They didn't like the anti-war uh, groups, and they were scared by the drugs that dope crazed hippies would come and rape their daughters and stuff. But music got everybody together in the same place, and hippies saw the rednecks weren't so bad, and the rednecks saw that the hippies weren't so bad. So I think having music as a catalyst, was a good thing. As far as race, I mean, Willie took Charlie Pride was starting out as a singer, and I think he was like the first black country star. And Willie was promoting shows back then, so he had Charlie Pride on the show with him, and the crowds loved him so much that Willie, who was the headliner, made Charlie headline, close the show. And every night he would come out and introduce Charlie, and I think the audience got a little quiet, thinking like, "What's going on here?" And Willie would introduce him and kiss him right on the lips, and have him, introduce him to the audience, and he just blew the audience away. So I think that that blurred some of the lines. The audience was going, maybe accepted him for, man, this guy's a great singer, and I can put all my prejudices behind me, hopefully.
Wow, wow, that's extremely heavy. And this is what time frame was this?
It was
Like,
before me, so it might have been it might have been 70, 69, 70, something like that.
wow. And that brings me to the question of today with all of this. I mean, there's a lot of protesting, civil unrest. Um, how does that relate, or the correlation, to the '60s and the civil rights movement of the '60s and what's happening today? With
Well, it's unfortunate that we're still talking about it in 2020. You thought that it would have resolved itself, that people would have, you know, figured this out. It's sad that we have to still deal with racism and prejudice. So, I don't know, man. I think it starts with just just policing yourself, just being a good person, and treating other people like you would want to be treated yourself. I mean, that's a start. I mean, I'm not going to be able to, I can't change anybody else but myself. I can voice my discontent, and I can join the march, or just, speak up. But I think it starts with, if each individual would just treat other people. I mean, there's no way I can have empathy, but there's no way I know what the experience is like. Really, I mean, going out today and wondering that if I get stopped by a cop, you know, is my life going to be threatened? Um, when I was a kid, because I smoked dope, or if I got stopped by a cop, I was afraid I was going to get busted, but I wasn't afraid I was going to get shot. And the fact that a black father has to tell his son that's growing up, on your way to school today, if you're hanging out with your buddies that are white are out and they're gonna get a little crazy or something, you're gonna be the one that's picked out, unfortunately. So you got to fly right. You've got to be extra, careful because you're not going to get the benefit of if something goes wrong or something, which is sad. But again, all cops aren't bad. I've got a few friends that are cops, and um, but they're of course bad apples. Of course, there are bad ones out there. It's just like saying all people of one. You can't judge everybody, but it's just for so long. Um, it's just been overlooked, and it's really great that it's fine. Unfortunately, the George Floyd murder was the straw that broke the camel's back. But maybe I do see some change. I mean, maybe there can be some change, but it's not going to. You can't just have one peaceful. Even though I am definitely a proponent of peaceful protests, one polite protest is not going to get anything done.
From a nation that's built on violence in general, like you said, it's kind of hard to just have peaceful protests. But ultimately, I think it's economic. Um, I mean, there's no question that there's a huge economic ramifications, or black people coming over here in 1619 as agricultural workforce, uh, you know, at the behest of their humanity. That's very troubling. However, with what you said, do you think that a lot of white people in America, because they don't interface with those same kind of issues, or institutionalized racism or the effects of that in their communities, that they just are just completely disconnected and unaware?
I think they're totally disconnected and unaware, and it's almost like it's almost ignorant. I mean, I don't. Racism, of course, is not genetic; it's learned behavior. But a lot of people. I mean, it is still kind of segregated. I mean, not like it was, but unless go to your black friends and just talk to them and ask what it's like for them daily. Um, I heard somebody say, and if you don't have any black friends, go make some. You I mean, luckily in music, the best musicians are idols. I mean, if you're a white guy, your idols are the black musicians. So I don't think there's any color barrier there. And I didn't grow up in a prejudiced, environment at all. I mean, family wise. My school, when I was in high school, which was late 60s, we had one black kid that moved from LA, and I kind of was a loner and wasn't very popular at school, but I became friends with this kid. And our school wasn't racist. It was just that, we're just starting to get segregated. So he really didn't have any problems, but I always sought out the underdog, and this guy, I don't want to even say this kid was an underdog, but he was a new kid, so, but back then I got out of high school in 69. It was, the same opportunities were not afforded, everybody equally.
Well, unfortunately, today, in a lot of ways, musicians and artists aren't afforded the same opportunities as other sectors of the
Oh
world.
yeah. Just that you're a musician, it's
Yeah, I mean, what do you think can fix the inequities for artists in general? How do you see this unfolding, or how would you like to see it unfold?
nowadays I'd be afraid to even start over again because the music. I mean, the music has changed so much, and each generation has to have its own. its own um, music it identifies with. But guys like Willie, they don't exist anymore. You're going to find, I mean, say in my field in country music or whatever, but I try to play all kinds of music. You've got a few really great singer-songwriters out there. I think Chris Stapleton is one of those that are kind of carrying on that tradition. That are great writers. But starting over, if you want to have a band today or be a musician, because you make records they don't really sell. I mean, because of I mean, yeah, I mean,
Mark,
you can get everything for free. So your money is made traveling on the road, and now with the COVID, nobody's able to tour. So unless you're one of the few really huge groups out there that are selling a lot of records. But man, it's got to be, it's a labor of love, and I never did it for the money. When I decided I wanted to play music full time, it's like, okay, can I afford to do this? Am I okay in this shitty little apartment? If I get a chance to play music, and I was, you know,
it's truly a love. It's like a love affair. Um,
yeah,
the music that is.
yeah, and I don't take for granted, the success I've had, but it's also it's kept me humble, and I'm just lucky to be making a living, playing music, and the people I've met. I mean, I always like to surround myself. Everybody I play with is better than me. That's been my goal, because it really makes you work harder and play better. I don't want to be the best musician in the room, that's for sure.
Well, trust me, I'm always striving to get better. I think that's part of the how can I say the journey of a musician. You're never there.
Yeah,
I-
definitely.
You're never there. Like music, no matter how good you are, the music is always better.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
and
a
you play better with better play with the players around you too. You
well,
know,
that's always the case. You can only
yeah,
learn unless you're playing with people that are better. And unfortunately, I feel like now in the world, it's kind of you have a lot of music programs. People studying music, and
hmm,
I'm always it's kind of perplexing because it seems like the world is upside down. Like you have really great musicians that shouldn't be teaching at all. They should just be playing. And if you
right, right,
learn
right.
from them, show up at the gig, or meet them after the gig, or meet them at the sound check, and maybe they'll share some, drop some nuggets
Yeah,
for
yeah,
musicians. But now it's like you have great musicians that are teaching at schools. It's like, man, this guy needs to be playing and people need to be listening to them. They don't need to be, you know, teaching
yeah,
at a school. And then what does it say about the whole society or cycle? Because now you have these institutions churning out musicians where there's nowhere to play. So if you're studying to actually be a professional musician, uh, and then there's no real opportunities or they're far and few between, it's like you have to come up with your own network of creating your own audience, building an audience, and all this is not to say that they don't have anything to offer, but as you know, and I know, we're from the generation where you apprentice with somebody who was really good,
yeah, yeah.
and you
And
apprentice.
you get that feedback from the audience too. Like if I play, play a solo and the audience likes it, they're going to let me know. Of course, I won't be happy with the solo. I'll think it sucked. But you get that feedback, and that's also in the studio you're not playing. You've got to be brilliant, and you're playing with the other musicians, but you don't get any live feedback, which really I'm fortunate to be able to do a little bit of both.
Well, like you said, studio and live are completely they're like two different worlds. A
Yeah,
little
yeah,
because in the studio you can make everything perfect and you could take your time to be perfect. You can micromanage it. A lot of people do that nowadays with technology. I'm sure you remember the days of recording where you got one or two takes, and if you didn't get it, that's what you have to live with.
yeah. And you splice the tape together and everything. There was.
Yeah, if you were lucky enough, they'd be like, "Man, sorry."
Yeah, but I'll go into a session thinking every take might be, especially if we're cutting live in the studio, or with a band. Um, every takes this might be the best one. Willie might say that's the best vocal. Let's take this, and it might not be my best performance. So I have to go in with the mindset that each one is going to be the take. You never really know. And if I got, say, the first was or the second take, I thought I nailed it, and Willie says, "Let's do one more," and I'm thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to do as good." But you've got to, come to the plate each time and have in your mind that that might be the one that we're using.
I mean, I love it for drummers and rhythm section players. Every take is the take.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, I remember, like, man, maybe going back 25 years ago, something like that. If you were in the studio and you played drums or bass, and you messed up a couple of times, they just call a new drummer.
Oh yeah, wow.
They would just be like, "Hey, thanks." No, no mercy. Brutal. Now
Yeah.
there's no drummers. You just have a machine.
Machine, yeah. But if you are a drummer, if you make a mistake, uh, make it again so it doesn't sound like a mistake.
Yeah, right. No, it's very true. It's very true. Well, is there a project that you're working on now, or something that you'd like to share, or a project that you'd like to do? Uh, what is that?
Yeah, well, I'd like to play something with you. You got to send me some files. We can do that.
Yeah,
Um,
our social distancing music.
yeah, right. I've got a movie score that I'm working on now. Um, it's just cues, so it's short little pieces of music, but it's 12 Mighty Orphans, and it's about an orphanage in Fort Worth back in the 30s. Um, developed a baseball team. I think that they went on to win state, but it's with Robert Duvall and Luke Wilson, and Martin Sheen are the actors, the ones that I've seen so far. I haven't seen the whole film, so they send me little pieces of like a rhythm section, a rhythm track, and create a melody to go along with it. So that's a fun process.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I hope that we will be on a bandstand, um, or in a studio sometime soon.
Yeah,
Uh,
that would be fun. That would be great.
well, one last thing that I'd like to ask for our listeners and viewers: give me one good road story.
Um, one good road story. Let's see.
I only know you only have about 3,000-4,000 of them.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Um, well, we were in California. We were playing this outdoor festival, and Willie and I were hanging out on the bus, and we hear we're in the parking lot of a hotel. You hear this loud roar, and of all these motorcycles, and these motorcycles pull into the parking lot of the hotel, parked by the bus, and it's this motorcycle gang, right? The Hell's Angels, and they knock on the door, and Willie and I are looking at each other, and we probably just smoked a joint. We're all kind of paranoid, and definitely wasn't our crowd at the time. And they said we want to meet Will fans, so Willie went out and said hi to them, and they chatted and said how much fans they were. Again, this is not our crowd necessarily, but the music, eases, or music soothes the savage beast. So they just were expressing that they were big fans of Willie's and blah, and wanted to meet him. And Willie said, well, nice to meet you guys, but I got to go to the gig. And they said, well, we'll take you. So Willie and I there were about 10 bikes. Willie and I got on the back of their bikes. And I guarantee you, these guys, they were big guys, big lad, and I'd never ridden motorcycles before. And they don't pack guys on their bikes most of the time, you know. So we to the venue, we rode to the gig, which was probably about 20 miles away, and we pull up to the backstage, and this is 10 bikes, and I'm, you know, was past and scared, you know, riding with these guys. And I figured, I've never done this before, might as well try it. And Willie, I'm not going to let Willie go by himself. So we pulled up to the backstage area, and there's a guard. It was at a racetrack, and there's a guard that stops the group, and he goes, "You can't go in here." And the first bike pulls up and says, "Well, this is Willie Nelson." And the cop goes, "Yeah, sure it is." And Willie had to pull out an Express card. You know, so don't leave home without it.
Wow. That's crazy. That so did they stay? Did the bikers stay for the gig? Did
I
they?
think they did, and they're very well behaved because, you know, it would reflect bad on Willie. You know, I don't know what, you know, happened after they left, but you know, they come to shows, and they've always been, you know, very polite, and you know, only you know, acted very polite around Willie because it would reflect, you know, bad on them, and had a certain amount of respect for Willie. So
So Willie got on a bike and rode. Was you said 20 miles?
yeah,
What?
yeah. But this guy was so big, Willie could have lit a cigarette, could have lit a joint for the guy because blocking the wind.
Wow.
He got on the back of the bike, and we both rode, and it was it was something that I had never experienced and hadn't done since, you know, because that stuff that doesn't happen too often. So I had to take advantage of the time, you know.
And Willie was cool with that, huh? Willie was
Yeah,
he was open to it.
yeah, he was open to it, and it's like, well, you know, you got to tell him no. I mean, it's like, and they could have been nicer. They could not have been nicer. And this was a long time ago. This was 20, you know, 30 years ago, when, or more than that, really, when, you know, the reputation was not the same, you know. So again, it's Willie. It's the power of music, you know, being a common denominator amongst, you know, groups that we had nothing in common with, you know.
Wow. That's stories from the road. That's all I can say.
Yeah, yeah. But at that time, the American Express commercial was a big deal. You know, they'd say, you know, "Don't leave home without it," and the guy would flash his card, and it was the only ID Willie had. I don't think he had a driver's license at the time.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And the guy let him through with it. He was like, "Oh,
Finally, yeah, yeah. He saw the card, and they let us through.
brilliant." Well, Mickey, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Well, Ali, thank you. It was a real privilege, and a pleasure.
man, it's also great. I always when I hear you speak, it's like down home. It's so relaxed and so cool. And it's for those who have not heard Mr. Raphael grace that mouth harp. Um, it is just like how he goes down real smooth, real easy.
Thank you. Well, they should listen to the projects we did with Winton, and you know, and the band.
And Willie, yes, yes,
Yeah, Winton and Willie, and then Nora Jones was part of that too.
absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure. We hope to see y'all soon. Keep listening. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as we speak. We hope to see y'all soon.
Some of the things I say.
Thank you.